Al Jazeera senior political analyst, and he joins us now from Doha. Marwan, I'm not sure whether you were listening to the previous interview guest, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, but he was throwing the prospect of a nuclear conflict. Do you think that's going too far?
Yes, I do. But, you know, he's the military expert, right? And he's been studying the region for a long time. I think it's something to bear in mind simply in order to stop the escalation, right? It's not because it's going to happen. I don't think it will. But I do think we are at a crunch time now, that it's time to stop the escalation. This is the time to stop the escalation. Otherwise, if they're really going to start bombing power plants and various installations in the region, starting with Iran, then I'm afraid there's no coming back from that. Now, having said that, to the nuclear issue in particular, there was a number of interviews with Israeli experts on Iran. There was one right after the 2003 war by an Israeli expert called Martin van Creveld, military expert. And today I saw on an American channel the foremost expert on Iran and Israel. You know what's in common between the two? Both of them predicted that Iran, after the war, will develop nuclear weapons. That if they didn't before, and they did it before, that having the United States invade and occupy its two neighbors to the north and the south, Iraq and Afghanistan, should have, according to Matt Crefeld, lead Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Today, this foremost expert at Amman, used to be in the military intelligence in Israel, says that one should expect now the new supreme leader in Iran to sanction the idea of developing nuclear weapons. And with all the plutonium and so on and so forth in Iran, no wonder Trump is so frantic about trying to get his hands on the enriched uranium, because if Iran ever hesitated after this war, it might just as well. Again, that's why this war should end sooner rather than later.
Well, is there any will on either side to do that? That's the point.
Well, today there was a piece in the New York Times about Trump trying to find a way out, but will he take it, right? Meaning he's looking at his options, because the situation as it stands today, it's neither to his advantage nor to that of Iran. In fact, the worst thing is that if either party comes a loser, I think the rest of the region is going to suffer for a long time, right? I mean, if this regime in Iran, loses the war but stays intact, this is going to really be terrible for the region and for Iran. And if the United States comes out a loser, and Trump feels vindictive and bitter and the rest of it, and he's going to start blaming everyone but himself, of course, then that's going to start looking ugly too. That's why there has to be a win-win kind of situation, even if it is packaged that way. In a sense, what do I mean by that, Irshad? One of your guests answered earlier about winning and losing. Look, you can never claim that Iran will come out winner from this war. You cannot come out winner after all this bombing that happened, all this terror that we've seen, all this destruction, and probably more death coming forward. The same thing for the United States. It embarked on a war, presumably with certain objectives, some of them vague, some of them loose, but none of them have been accomplished in the sense of the nuclear, in the sense of the missile, in the sense of destroying Iran, regime change, and what have you. So the best way forward is to end the war, wind it down, end it immediately. As you and I spoke before, the worst thing in American military history was not just to start bad wars like Vietnam, like Iraq. It was not ending them in time, because one thing is to start a bad war, another thing not to end a bad war. Why? Because of some kind of a national honor, dignity, or presidential, authority of some sort. So continuing the war now will simply lead to more casualties, more destructions, and probably such escalation that will end up destroying the region.
Marwan, one thing which possibly could perhaps be something to concentrate people's minds would be when these high energy prices start to filter through, as they already are, into the gas stations of the Americans. The other bit is, of course, you know, Iran may project defiance, but at the end of the day, it's in a very precarious position, if you will. It's got enormous damage to deal with, and on top of that, of course, it's got an economy which is moribund, and that's putting it mildly.
Absolutely. Look, for the United States and for the American consumer in particular, this is going to be perhaps painful, but not too painful. Because at the end of the day, much of the windfall is going to the American oil companies, right? I mean, America produces 13 million barrels a day. It's an exporter of oil, not an importer of oil, net-wise. It's the others, it's the allies, the Japan, Korea, Europeans, and others are going to suffer. It's a lot of the poorer countries, Sri Lanka and Pakistan and others, that will suffer even more than everyone else. Having said that, the real existential war here is for the Iranian regime in particular. That's why the Americans will do so much, but the Iranian regime will do anything, whatever it takes, in order to stay in power, because it is existential for the Iranian regime. It's not the same way for Israel and the United States, that basically started this war of choice that is threatening to destroy much of the region.
Marwan, always a pleasure, never a chore. Marwan Bishara there, senior political analyst.